best practices for configuration on Smart Status DVI. Now in our writer, we are going to click on our Smart Status icon at the top right-hand corner of our writer. This will launch us into the Dvi dashboard. Once the Smart Status Dvi dashboard launches, it'll ask you for your username and login. So I am going to log in as my admin user, and I'm going to click Login. Now, once the configuration loads up, you'll notice we are greeted with the Smart Status dashboard. Up at the top, you have Checklist, Smart Status, Dashboard, and Configuration. As I said, we're going to be focusing on configuration today specifically. Let's click on Configuration. Now, when we click on Configuration, we're greeted with a set of columns on the left-hand side of the window, and it goes from General Settings to Checklist. Now, I typically like to start with the user section first because I think it's important to know that before you can do anything in RWriter Touch, that you have a user configured before you start. So I'm going to click on my Users tab here. Now, when I click on the Users tab, you'll notice I have a set of employees listed in the system here. I want to briefly explain some of the decisions I made when granting these employees and technicians permissions. So you'll notice I have Andy up at the top there. Andy is a technician in my system, and I went ahead and set Andy's employee name to just his first name. I also set his password to his first name as well. One of the things I found in training RWriter Smart Status DVI for the past few years is that it's as simple as you can make it for these employees to log into the system. They will effectively use it every single day. So for Andy's password, I'm just going to set Andy's password to his first name. My thought process is if they can't remember this, we may have a bigger problem. So I just set it to all lowercase because it's super easy for them to be able to log in, and it's something that they will never forget. On the right-hand side, you'll see we have a set of columns here with permissions. We have WIP, EIP, and time clock. So what do those mean? Well, work in progress is WIP. That would essentially be our repair orders. EIP is our estimate in progress or our estimate window. Now, my thought process on technicians is that they just need to have access to the work in progress so they can see what they're working on, and then estimates in progress so they can see what pending work could be assigned to them. The time clock field I leave there as well so they can punch in and out for the day. It's obviously more convenient for them to do this from their phone or tablet than having to walk up to a computer each and every time. That is optional, and you do need to make sure that if you select time clock, there is a corresponding employee attached to that user. So for technicians, you'll have the username, the employee, which should match the username. The technician should also match the employee name. You do not need to list a service writer for a technician. And then the last little tidbit that I add here to my technicians is limit tech view. So what does that do for a technician? Well, it allows them to only see the work that they are assigned to. So if I have Andy and Bart working on tickets and I don't have limit tech view assigned to them, basically they can see one another's work, and sometimes things can get missed in translation and they can be clicking on the wrong repair order. So in order to effectively give the technician what I would say is tunnel vision, I like to choose limit tech view to keep their focus only on the things that they are assigned to. All right, let's talk about a service writer. So I have my service writer down here, Rick. Rick has his service writer programmed, and you'll notice I don't have an employee programmed on Rick at all. Now with service writers, it could always be a little bit different because depending on how that person is paid, whether or not they're physically punching into our writer or not, if they're a salary employee, you may not need to have an employee name attached to them. Again, this is arbitrary and totally up to the shop, but the same thing applies with Rick. I set Rick's username to Rick and his password to Rick. Super simple and easy to get logged in there. I also programmed his service writer to his account in the system, but you'll notice I don't have a technician or employee attached to him. Again, the only thing I would suggest is if you are utilizing the hourly portion of everything, to go ahead and make sure you have a service writer attached to here. Alternatively, service writers are notoriously at a counter where they do have access to the main version of our writer, so this could just be one less option that you're providing for that reason. Off to the far right, you'll notice that my service writer is not programmed as an administrator, which means he doesn't have access to this DVI configuration dashboard that we are in right now. I do have him set with the new RO and the new estimate window, which again would be that work in progress, where we can create new repair orders and new estimates directly from the tablet. So basically that means if I'm standing car side with a customer, I can go ahead and write a new ticket up, or at least start the process with the customer and get their notes and their service requests directly from this window. Again, the work in progress and estimate window is viewable for this service writer. And you'll notice on the far right here, I have a Shop Pulse icon clicked off here as well. So what is Shop Pulse? Well, Shop Pulse allows the service writers to quickly see store sales in a moment's notice. That is a real-time feed directly to their phone or tablet that they can open and just sort of see where they're at for the day. Super handy and convenient. On the far right, we have Dashboard. Now, what is Dashboard? Dashboard allows the service writers to see how many checklists are being completed and by whom. That can be located directly from here. If we click on the Dashboard menu, you'll see we don't have anything loaded in here now, but it basically lets us know how many ROs we've written and the total ROs with checklists, and it also breaks down the completion ratios for those checklists along with the recommended items and defects that are on each ticket. Essentially, it allows us to see if technicians are truly completing the repair order in an accurate manner. It's a metric that we can use. Let's move on to our email configuration. You'll notice I'm skipping over data location, and I'm skipping over data location because that is something for our team to configure for you. It's something that you shouldn't have to go in and ever touch. But I'll briefly touch on this just for the moment because you'll notice in here there is a touch URL. This little section right here, this first portion of this will typically be the IP address that is on the computer. If there is any reason to go into this section at all, it would be to look up the IP address that we have programmed in there. And again, it's everything from the HTTP : // and then it would be like 192.168.1.10, something to that effect. Every store is going to be different. Let's go back into email settings. So email settings, I highly recommend that while we are going through the configuration process with you, typically when we install RWriter Touch, we will ask you, do you have an email? That email will need to be programmed into this window here. And I'm just going to go through and just sort of show you a mock version of this. You program your password, your name. Now, what is your name? Well, you can easily put your email address in there, and you can say, I'll put Ken Dono because I'm the manager or owner, and you can program this essentially for each individual computer, which is great. You can also send backup emails or change the return address. So if my return address was going to be different, I can say manager@rwriter.com. That way I get the email, but the send account comes from training@rwriter.com. So there's different things you can do in that regard. You can also send backup emails as well, which I think is really great. A lot of shops that I work with will typically create a specific email that just functions for the checklist. So every time they send a checklist to a customer, it gets backed up to this email so they can call upon it again later on. That's just a suggestion. It's not a requirement, but it's an unmonitored email essentially that just holds all the checklist for searchable reasons. Let's say your computer crashes and you lose your checklist. Well, luckily the backup checklist are located in that backup email. Not a requirement, just a handy suggestion. And then of course, an email subject, which is something I usually put pretty standard. And I'll just put vehicle inspection. Now you can put this as anything you want. I just use vehicle inspection. You can identify your shop if you like. It's totally up to you. You can also include a header and a shop logo, which I would recommend. Now when you do use shop logos, you want to make sure that it's no more than 80 pixels, and you want to put that logo or icon somewhere safe so it doesn't get lost, because it's going to need to know where that data location is for that image. And of course, you can put your headers and information such as your address, your shop name, along with your phone numbers, and any pre-defaulted email message that you want, like, hey, we'll give you a call shortly to discuss the contents of your courtesy check. So those are just a couple of helpful suggestions to enhance the overall appearance of your inspections. All right, interfaces and options is another area of RWriter Smart Status DVI that you shouldn't have to touch, But if you wanted to make changes such as enable or disable Carfax QuickVin, you can do that from here. But again, my recommendation is just to leave this on all the time. Switching over to the goals tab, you can go ahead and program your shop's daily calculated sales goals along with how many ROs that you've done. So I'll go ahead and put 20 in there. And let's say my average RO is $250. It's projecting my store sales off of 20 ROs at $250 at $5,000. Now your budget may look a little bit differently and you may say, well, my budget is actually $4,500, but you sort of get the idea. You can set a goal within the system, which when you are looking at ShopPulse, if you follow it along with our other presentations on this, you'll see how ShopPulse reflects these numbers that we have loaded in here. I'm going to go ahead and click save on this window here. Let's talk about Quick Jobs. Quick Jobs is a really interesting addition to Smart Jobs. It allows us to program a job that does not have a parts kit attached to it, to where you can easily and quickly add that to a ticket directly from RWriter Touch. Now, it says you can assign up to 20 labor operations that will be available within RO Touch, which is Smart Status DVI. Now, these operations cannot have a parts kit attached to it. So what do I recommend as far as jobs that don't have a parts kit? Well, I love to use this for inspections. Anything that I can quickly add to a ticket, car side with the customer, is what I'll typically add to this quick job section. You'll notice I have free courtesy check, I have a suspension inspection, a charging system test. A lot of what I have here are all tests that don't require parts kit attached to it, and it's something that you can just add via labor. So you want to really identify these, and you also want to make sure that if you are going to choose the auto add option, it's something that can universally be added to all tickets. So my free courtesy check policy in my shop is that we're going to do a courtesy inspection on any ticket that comes through the door. So I have that to where as soon as I type up a ticket from RWriter Touch, it will immediately add that courtesy inspection to the ticket. Just a handy feature. It's one less thing you have to remember as you're going through writing up the process, and you can remember the more important things when you're car side with the customer. Let's move over to Smart Status, because this one is a little bit more complicated. We have a lot going on here, but I want to go ahead and quickly touch on some of the things that are in here. So I'm just going to quickly scroll down through here so you can see all the things we have going on here, and then I'll come up to the top to explain them all. So what we're witnessing here is all the different steps that I have programmed within my Smart Status window. Now your Smart Status may look a little bit different depending on your use case, but they all function the same way. Up at the very top, you'll notice that we have a toggle here in which you can choose what field you want to pull the phone number from. You'll notice that mine is set to phone 1, which is the home field, but I can easily set that to the cell field, which I would recommend doing because essentially you are going to be texting a cell phone, not landlines. So you want to make sure you have the correct field noted. You also want to make sure that wherever your service writers are entering the cell phones, that it's dictated to the right field. In this case, phone 2, which would be my cell phone field. The second piece of information here I'd like to point out is that I have a text message subject field in which mine says, "Hello, RWriter." Now you can program this with anything you want, and I recommend typically putting your store name in here. And we'll just say it's RWriter Automotive. So we'll put something like that in there. That way, when we text message the customer, they know who we are and they don't think it's, a spam message or something like that. Now, ideally, when you do opt a customer into that text messaging, you do want to do that with them in front of you, if at all possible, so you can ensure that they did respond with okay and you did receive their message. I've had a couple of situations where a customer responded with no, thinking it was a spam message, and they were opted out of the texting until we created a new repair order for them. Now, a lot of that can be alleviated just by using the text message subject field because it will identify you as the shop. Now, the text message opt-out messages and the text messages that we have listed here are sort of the defaults, and they work very, very well, and I really can't recommend changing those at all. However, with that being said, we do have some other configurations beneath here as well. The automatic refresh interval is set from 0 to all the way up to 20 seconds or minutes if you want. I have mine set to 1 minute, which I find works to be a good sweet spot. That means every minute I'm pulling in new messages from my customer, which is more than adequate, and it's not quite as taxing on the system or internet connection. You'll also see that I have 10 steps set up here. Now this number is somewhat arbitrary to the shop, and really it's going to depend on how many steps you want. I have mine set up to 10, but if you like, you can simply click this drop-down menu and drop it down to as little as 2. I find the effective number of steps is anywhere from 10 to 7 steps, and you can choose whether or not the customer or the technician gets those messages. Now, obviously, the opt-in to text-in field, we want to make sure the check send text message is sent. That's going to go to the customer. You can also program these colors in here if you like. Let's say you don't like this weird little green color and you want to change that to more of, I don't know, we'll change it to a pink. You can change it to a pink if you like. So again, you can dictate what the image is going to look like directly out of our writer. Again, like I said, I have mine set up to 10 different steps, and as I scroll through these steps, you maybe get an ideas to yourself on things that you can eliminate to speed up this process, and that's definitely doable. Now, one thing I want to note about this here, what I've seen some customers do is that they'll make changes in Smart Status and then they'll click over here on this left-hand side. The minute you click on that left-hand side, you will lose any configurations you've made here. So we've placed down at the very bottom a save icon, and up at the very top, there's a save icon. Make sure before you click off a Smart Status and made all these wonderful changes that you click save. That will lock in those changes so they don't get lost. Moving over to technician images. This is a field that I feel often gets overlooked, and it's something super convenient and easy. We all have cell phones. I would suggest take a photo of your service writers, of your technicians, and program that within here. Obviously, I have our writer logo in here, but you can easily select on the technician, choose an image that you've uploaded, and add it to our writer Smart Status. Now, why do I recommend doing that? Well, when we're looking at the Smart Status command console, if you wanted to quickly assign a technician, like I'm going to do, here's Andy, I'm going to take Andy and assign him to this ticket here, it's easier to see a technician's face than it is to sit there and look at the text here. So if I'm looking, I can see, okay, that's Andy, that's Jerry, that's Jim, and I can quickly drag those icons over to the repair order and assign them to the ticket. It's just something easy and convenient that I found that works really well is the technician images. Service writer images are also located under here as well. If you want your service writer images to be listed here, you can definitely do that. It's a nice personalized touch. Today, I just wanted to go over the general configuration of our writer Smart Status DVI.